one woman's fierce resolve and undying spirit. Olga's story isn't merely a tale of survival. It's the tale of a ruler who defied the norms of her time, turning personal tragedy into a transformative legacy. She was a leader as merciless as she was cunning, a strategist who turned the tides of fate to secure her place in history. Welcome back to ASMR History. Today we journey into the life of Olga of Kiev, a woman who walked the line between legend and reality, whose life was filled with retribution, resilience, and redemption. I'm captivated by her story because Olga rose from the ashes of heartbreak, wielding power with a skill and decisiveness that could rival any of her male counterparts. She's remembered today as both a fearsome ruler and a venerated saint in the Russian Orthodox Church, a woman whose legacy reverberates through Eastern European history. Throughout this story, expect tales of betrayal, the thirst for vengeance, the push for religious transformation, and the evolution from fierce leader to revered saint. But before we dive into Olga's rise to power, let's begin with her early life and her marriage to Igor of Kiev. Olga's story begins shrouded in mystery, with legends as varied and scattered as the lands of Kievan Rus itself. Some say she was born in the city of Pskov, a northern town rich in tradition and tales of its own. Others hint at even more distant origins, imagining her as a figure from across the Slavic lands or beyond, with a strength and presence rare for her time. Little is known of her early years, but what history agrees upon is that Olga was a woman of striking intelligence and formidable spirit, a unique combination that would serve her well in the brutal, complex world of the 10th century Slavic kingdoms. She was not merely a young girl growing up in obscurity. Olga was a figure destined to leave a mark, her life soon bound to the ambitions of Kievan Rus, one of the most formidable early states of Eastern Europe. Her marriage to Prince Igor of Kiev was what truly set her on this path of destiny. As a young bride, Olga stepped into a world of unimaginable power, a court filled with towering personalities, rival factions, and the promise of endless conquest. She found herself amid a world where alliances were as fragile as glass, and betrayal was often just a heartbeat away. Igor, an ambitious and formidable leader himself, was constantly driven by the desire to expand the influence of Kievan Rus. Yet, he faced relentless challenges: the pressure from neighbouring tribes, internal unrest, and the persistent need to assert his authority over his people. In this world, Olga, though not born to rule, would soon find herself wielding power in ways few could have imagined. By all accounts, she stood by Igor's side with unwavering loyalty and strength, both as his partner and as a supporter of his vision. She played a critical role in unifying Kievan Rus, working to ensure the loyalty of its many, often volatile, territories. In those early years, Olga likely took on what was expected of her, a traditional role as a queen consort, serving as a stabilizing presence and a wise counsellor in Igor's court. But she was no mere figurehead. Kievan Rus at the time was a sprawling land, a mosaic of diverse tribes, languages, and cultures, and its unity was tenuous at best. Olga's role was not simply that of a supportive wife. She was a queen in a landscape that demanded strength, strategy, and a keen sense of politics. She must have watched Igor's dealings with shrewd interest, absorbing lessons on the art of rule, assessing the intricate power dynamics that shaped their world. Perhaps she sensed that her destiny might someday call for more than mere observation. She was learning, sharpening her skills, and preparing, though she may not have fully realized it then, for the day when she would take the reins herself. As Olga settled into her role, her support became a pillar for Igor, a foundation upon which he built his authority. Her influence grew quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, but with each passing year, Olga came to understand more deeply what it meant to wield power in a land as vast and fractured as Kievan Rus. She was no longer merely watching from the sidelines. She was shaping the future. She may not have known it then, but her education in statecraft was only just beginning, preparing her for a journey that would soon become deeply personal, a path that would thrust her into the heart of power in ways she could scarcely have imagined. For it wasn't long before tragedy struck, a tragedy that would ignite the fires of vengeance and thrust Olga into a role she had never anticipated. The death of Prince Igor was not merely a loss, it was an eruption of violence that shattered the peace Olga had known and sent ripples of fear and shock across the land of Kievan Rus. Igor, ever ambitious and constantly driven to reinforce his power, had pushed the Drevlians, a tributary tribe already simmering with resentment, to their breaking point. His demand for yet another tribute, yet another reminder of their subjugation, was the final straw for the Drevlians. Years of tense relations had festered into open hostility, and now they refused to remain beholden to his rule. In an act of defiance, they lured him into their territory, preying upon his confidence, using his own assumptions of authority against him. It was here, in the dark and unyielding forests of Drevlian land, that Igor met a fate as brutal as it was symbolic. The Drevlians did not simply kill Igor, they orchestrated a death that would send a message to all who might dare to oppress them. They bound him to 2 birch trees, bent down to the ground, their branches straining under the tension. With cold precision, they released the trees, and in a moment of horrifying brutality, Igor was torn apart as the branches snapped back upright. His final screams, if anyone had heard them, would have pierced the silence of the forest, a chilling echo of the depths of Drevlian anger and defiance. His death was more than a personal tragedy for Olga. It was a direct assault on the authority and pride of Kievan Rus, a challenge issued to the kingdom itself. The Drevlians declared, "It is better for us to be subject to one of our own and rule ourselves." Words that would spark a flame in Olga, words that would become the fuel for a response the Drevlians could never have anticipated. When the news reached Olga, it was as though the ground beneath her shifted, the stability of her life and her kingdom crumbling in an instant. Her husband was gone, brutally taken from her, and her son was far too young to take the reins of power. also the stark reality that the future of Kievan Rus now lay precariously in her hands. She might have surrendered to mourning, let her heart be overtaken by sorrow, but Olga was no ordinary widow. In her heart, sorrow hardened into something else entirely, something sharper, colder. Her grief transformed, tempered, like steel in a furnace, and emerged as an unyielding resolve that demanded retribution. This was the moment when the world saw a new Olga emerge, a woman shaped by the fires of tragedy and anger, a ruler who now understood with crystalline clarity that power was not given but taken. In this crucible of loss, Olga became something more than a queen. She became a force, unrelenting and fierce, her gaze set firmly on the task before her, avenging her husband, restoring her kingdom's honour, and demonstrating to all who dared to doubt her that she was not only worthy of her throne, but was, in fact, its fiercest guardian. The Drevlians had unleashed in Olga a fury they could not begin to comprehend, one that would leave an indelible mark on history. I imagine Olga's mind racing, calculating her next steps with a precision that came from a lifetime spent observing the art of rule. She was no stranger to the world of politics and alliances, yet now her challenge was not only to preserve her throne, but to make an unforgettable statement. She would respond to this insult not merely with force, but with a fury that would etch her name into legend. This was not about reclaiming her husband's honour. It was about showing her enemies and her allies alike that Olga of Kiev was not to be underestimated. Her first act was simple. She feigned submission. She sent word to the Drevlians, who, emboldened by their victory, proposed that she marry their leader, Prince Mal, thereby consolidating power and erasing any threat Kievan Rus might pose. But behind her words of acceptance was a plan as intricate as it was ruthless. Olga's response was brewing, taking shape in her mind as she prepared to exact vengeance, not only for her husband, but for the insult to her rule. Her intellect, once wielded in quiet diplomacy, now turned to cold strategy. There would be no forgiveness, no peace, not until the Drevlians had felt the full force of her wrath. This was the moment of transformation. Olga had shifted from grieving widow to vengeful sovereign, a ruler who would stop at nothing to preserve her legacy and protect her people. Her mind was set, her heart steeled, and the path before her was clear. The Drevlians would pay dearly, and the story of her revenge would be whispered in awe for generations to come. Now, with a plan simmering in her mind, Olga prepared for what would become one of the most infamous and calculated acts of revenge in history. Olga's revenge on the Drevlians was not a swift or singular act of retribution. It was a calculated storm, gathering force with each unfolding step, underscoring her tactical brilliance and her unbreakable spirit. She had seen her husband brutalized, her authority questioned, and her heart filled with a fury that could not be appeased by mere words or token punishment. Olga would ensure the Drevlians remembered her name, and not through a fleeting act of wrath. No, her vengeance would be a lesson etched in the annals of history, unfolding with precision that it would send chills down the spine of anyone who dared to oppose her. Her first blow was as unexpected as it was deadly, cloaked in a deceptive calm that lulled the Drevlians into believing they held the upper hand. After their brutal act against her husband, the Drevlians believed they could pacify Olga by proposing marriage between her and their prince. With this union, they sought to consolidate their power over Kievan Rus, arrogantly confident that Olga, a widow with no immediate heir on the throne, would have no choice but to accept. They sent a group of envoys to bring forth the proposal, men who arrived in her court confident, even arrogant, believing their plan would be accepted without question. But Olga met them with an expression of warmth and apparent gratitude, masking the depths of her true intent. She feigned acceptance of the proposal, telling the envoys that she was honoured by the offer and that she looked forward to the union. With careful words, she invited them to remain as her honoured guests, claiming that the wedding preparations would require time. Her kindness and hospitality seemed genuine, as if she had embraced the idea of reconciliation. Little did they know, however, that Olga was weaving a deadly trap around them. Her hospitality nothing more than a well-constructed facade to conceal the storm gathering beneath. As the envoys settled in, perhaps feeling victorious at the ease of their conquest, Olga's orders took shape. She commanded her men to dig a deep trench outside the city, a grave hidden in plain sight. When the trench was ready, Olga summoned the envoys under the pretense of further wedding arrangements. One by one they gathered, their confidence still intact, unaware that they were being led to their own tomb. Then, with a calm but unforgiving voice, Olga gave the command that would seal their fate. She ordered that the earth be piled over them, each shovelful falling with an ominous finality. The weight of the soil must have pressed relentlessly against them, a physical manifestation of her unyielding wrath. Entombed alive, the envoys became the first victims of her calculated revenge, the first step in what would become a legendary tale of retribution. For Olga, this was only the beginning, a mere prologue to the justice she had planned. Her message was clear. This would not be a quick or forgettable act of vengeance. Instead, it was a prelude to a relentless campaign that would strip the Drevlians of their power and their pride. Her second retaliation was no less brutal. When word of the first delegation's fate reached the Drevlians, they were shaken but determined to press forward, sending a second group of ambassadors to Kievan Rus. Olga greeted them with the same deceptive kindness, masking her intentions behind a cordial invitation to rest in a grand bathhouse after their journey. As they relaxed, perhaps lulled by the steam and warmth, Olga's men barred the doors and set the building ablaze, turning their retreat into a fiery tomb. The flames consumed the bathhouse in a matter of moments, thick smoke filling the air, leaving no escape for the Drevlian envoys trapped inside. This act wasn't just a death sentence, it was deeply symbolic, a chilling display of Olga's resolve. The bathhouse, a place meant for purification and renewal, had been transformed by Olga into a vessel of revenge. She twisted the symbolism, turning what should have cleansed into something that destroyed, purging Kievan Rus of its enemies, not with mercy, but with fire. As the flames consumed the trapped envoys, Olga sent a message to her people and her enemies alike. Her wrath was absolute, a force that demanded respect, and a justice that would brook no betrayal. The third act of her vengeance was as cunning as it was ruthless, weaving deception with deadly intent. This time, Olga invited the remaining Drevlian leaders to a grand feast, a gesture cloaked in civility and diplomacy. She presented herself as a queen willing to forgive, offering an olive branch to soothe the bitterness between their peoples. The Drevlians, seeing what appeared to be a shift in her stance, began to hope that her fury had subsided. Surely, they reasoned, a feast meant peace, a chance to mend relations and bring an end to the hostility. In droves they arrived, eager to celebrate what they believed was a truce. The hall was alive with the sounds of laughter and clinking goblets, as the Drevlians dined with abandon, filling their cups and revelling in the perceived end of their troubles. They ate, drank, and toasted their future alongside the queen they had wronged. But as the night deepened, their celebration turned dark. In a calculated moment, as they were caught up in revelry, Olga gave the signal. Her soldiers appeared from the shadows, swords drawn, and descended upon the feasting crowd. Chaos erupted as Drevlian leaders, unarmed and defenceless, fell under the merciless blade. Blood splattered across the tables, staining the banquet meant to unite them. What had begun as a gesture of peace became a massacre that dismantled the Drevlian power structure in one swift, brutal act. Their leaders lay slain, leaving the Drevlian people in shock and turmoil, their society leaderless, vulnerable, and stripped of any hope of resistance. With each act, Olga's revenge grew colder and more calculated, the flames of her fury refining her from a grieving widow into a sovereign with a resolve as unbreakable as steel. Her retribution was no longer about mourning Igor's death alone. It had become a force of its own, a legend in the making. Her fury was measured, her actions premeditated, and her authority absolute. But Olga was not yet done. She had one final act of vengeance that would not only break the Drevlians completely, but would carve her name into history as a figure of unmatched power and resilience. The last blow she dealt was to be a grim masterpiece, a story passed down through generations, whispered in awe and fear, forever reminding all who heard it of the power Olga wielded. She had avenged her husband, yes, but more than that, she had reclaimed her throne and made her name indelible, a name that would stand as a testament to both wrath and the unbreakable spirit of a queen. Her last strike took her to the very heart of Drevlian resistance. Their capital, Izgorostan, the stronghold where they believed they could hold out against her relentless fury. But Olga had no intention of besieging the city with brute force alone. Instead, she devised a plan so cunning, so ingenious, that it borders on myth. After surrounding Izgorostan, she sent a message to its exhausted inhabitants, offering them mercy if they agreed to her simple terms. Desperate for an end to their suffering, the Drevlians agreed to negotiate, but they were taken aback by her unexpected demand. Each household was to deliver 3 sparrows and 3 pigeons. This strange request left the Drevlians confused, but they dared not question it, hopeful that peace was within reach. Sparrows and pigeons seemed such a minor price for survival, a harmless offering that even the poorest households could fulfill. With relief, they gathered the birds, little suspecting that these innocent creatures would soon become the bearers of Olga's final, devastating vengeance. Once the birds were in her possession, Olga revealed the full extent of her plan. She ordered her soldiers to attach small pieces of cloth soaked in sulphur and pitched to the legs of each bird. With a calculated smile, she released these firebirds back into the sky, watching as they instinctively flew home to their roosts within the wooden buildings of Izgorostan. It must have been a surreal sight, the flocks of birds returning to the very city they had been taken from, each carrying the spark of destruction. One by one, the birds nestled back into their familiar homes, perching on rooftops, nestling in beams, settling in the structures they had always known. And then, almost like the first breath of a storm, flames began to flicker to life, small at first, mere wisps of smoke rising from rooftops and ledges, but the sparks quickly caught, the flames feeding on the dry wood, spreading with an unstoppable ferocity. Within moments, Izgorostan was ablaze, its buildings consumed in a firestorm that leaped from house to house, trapping its residents with no place to run, no sanctuary from the wrath they had unleashed upon themselves. Olga's vengeance had transformed the city into an inferno, her retribution raining down in flames from the very birds they had thought would bring peace. Olga stood at a distance, watching as her final act of revenge came full circle, her unyielding gaze fixed on the smoke rising from the burning city. This wasn't merely the defeat of a rival, it was a testament to her power, her cunning, and her relentless pursuit of justice. She had orchestrated a punishment that left the Drevlians with nothing, not their leaders, not their pride, not even their homes. The smouldering ruins of Izgorostan stood as a silent reminder of Olga's message to her people and her enemies alike. Kievan Rus would not be humiliated, and its queen was a force to be reckoned with. With the Drevlians defeated, their leaders dead, and their capital reduced to ashes, Olga's revenge was complete. She had reclaimed her authority, secured her people's respect, and, through her calculated acts, restored the dignity of Kievan Rus. But, as the smoke of Izgorostan's ruins began to fade, Olga turned her thoughts to the future. She had gained far more than vengeance from this journey. She had claimed her place as a ruler of unmatched strength and wisdom. Now she faced a new challenge, one that required a different kind of strength. In the wake of destruction, Olga saw the need to build, to shape Kievan Rus, not through fear alone, but through stability and vision. Her transformation from a queen defined by vengeance to a ruler committed to prosperity marked a turning point, not just for her, but for the kingdom she would leave behind. Kievan Rus was no longer just a collection of tribes under the shadow of her husband's legacy. It was now her domain, a realm that she would guide into a period of growth and stability. She would wield her authority with the same skill and determination that had fueled her quest for justice, now turned toward unifying her people, strengthening her kingdom, and securing a legacy that would endure long after her reign. With her revenge complete, Olga turned her gaze from the ashes of her enemies to the sprawling kingdom that lay before her. She was no longer simply the grieving widow or the vengeful queen. She was now the regent of Kievan Rus, tasked with guiding the kingdom through an era of transition until her son, Sviatoslav, was old enough to rule. This was her moment to shape the future, to build something that would endure beyond the scars of war and vengeance. The same fierce determination that had fueled her wrath now drove her ambition to unify and strengthen her people. One of Olga's first acts as ruler was to bring order to the very system that had led to Igor's downfall. The collection of tribute, the polyudia, had been a chaotic, oppressive process that left subject tribes resentful and primed for rebellion. Olga saw an opportunity to refine it, to create a structured system that would not only stabilize the kingdom, but also prevent future uprisings. She established designated tribute centers across Kievan Rus, strategically placing them in regions that allowed for efficient oversight. This move transformed polyudy into a predictable and controlled operation, one that generated loyalty rather than hostility. With these reforms, Olga wasn't just collecting wealth. She was creating a framework of accountability and order that gave her subjects a stake in the stability of Kievan Rus. Her tribute system became a cornerstone of her governance, one that allowed her to reinvest in the kingdom and build a foundation of trust with the diverse tribes under her rule. In the wake of bloodshed, Olga laid the foundation for a more organized Kievan Rus, steering it toward unity and strength. But governance required more than just economic reform. Olga understood that a kingdom as vast and varied as Kievan Rus needed protection from both internal dissent and external threats. While she maintained a formidable army, she recognized that constant warfare would only drain her resources and fracture her people. Instead, she opted for a balanced approach, strengthening her military defences while seeking alliances that would bolster Kievan Rus's standing in the region. She fortified key cities, established defences along vulnerable borders, and cultivated a network of loyal leaders to ensure the kingdom's security. Through diplomacy, Olga extended her influence far beyond Kievan Rus's borders. She forged alliances with neighbouring tribes, pacified hostile territories, and even opened diplomatic relations with the powerful Byzantine Empire. Her approach was both practical and visionary, aimed not at dominance through force, but at creating a stable network of allies and partners who respected Kievan Rus as a rising power. These relationships allowed Olga to position her kingdom as a central player in the region, laying the groundwork for future generations to build upon. Under Olga's guidance, Kievan Rus experienced a remarkable period of growth and stability. She implemented a series of administrative reforms that reached into the heart of daily life, from trade policies to the management of local affairs. of governance that would operate smoothly in her absence. She empowered local leaders, established councils to oversee different regions, and introduced a legal framework that helped standardize laws across the kingdom. This structure not only centralized her power, but also gave the people of Kievan Rus a sense of order and justice that had been lacking. Her reign brought a new era of prosperity, as trade flourished, and Kievan Rus became a hub for merchants travelling between the east and the west. Markets buzzed with activity, rivers were busy with traders, and the kingdom's economy thrived under the stability that Olga's rule provided. What had once been a scattered collection of tribes now began to feel like a united nation, bound by common laws, shared trade routes, and a loyalty to the throne that Olga had painstakingly cultivated. But Olga's vision went beyond just the practicalities of governance. She understood the power of legacy. As she raised her son Sviatoslav, she instilled in him the values and wisdom she had gained through her own experiences. Her guidance would shape him into the warrior prince who would later take Kievan Rus to new heights. A ruler who would expand upon the foundations she had laid. Olga's influence was both subtle and profound, a quiet force that moulded the future of her kingdom, even as she led it through the present. Through it all, Olga never lost sight of her mission, to build a Kievan Rus that could withstand the challenges of the future. Her journey from vengeance to governance was one marked by resilience, intelligence, and a vision that few could match. She had avenged her husband, secured her son's inheritance, and transformed her kingdom into a powerful, stable state. Yet, as she looked upon the kingdom she had built, Olga found herself searching for something deeper, something that could bring meaning beyond the sword and the throne. This quest would lead her to the Byzantine Empire once more, not for war or diplomacy, but for a new purpose that would change her life and her kingdom forever. Olga's journey to Christianity was as profound as it was unexpected. She had forged her life through blood, vengeance, and political acumen, yet a new call stirred within her, a quiet, powerful pull toward a faith that would not only transform her, but also shape the destiny of Kievan Rus for generations to come. Olga was never one to shy away from exploring new worlds, and this journey was no exception. Her path took her south, to the glittering heart of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. Her arrival in Constantinople was nothing short of remarkable. The city, with its grand architecture, bustling streets, and the awe-inspiring Hagia Sophia, must have seemed like another world to her, a realm of sophistication and spiritual grandeur, unlike anything in Kievan Rus. Olga was welcomed with great honour, and among those who met her was Emperor Constantine VII, a man whose admiration for her was both immediate and profound. Stories say that Constantine, struck by her intelligence, beauty, and strength, quickly became enamoured and even proposed marriage. But Olga, with her characteristic wit, had no intention of giving away her independence. In response to his proposal, Olga requested to be baptized, asking Constantine to be her godfather. The emperor, though disappointed in his marriage hopes, agreed, delighted to witness Olga's embrace of the Christian faith. In a ceremony filled with Byzantine splendour, Olga was baptized, taking the Christian name Eleanor. As the water washed over her, perhaps Olga felt the weight of her past lifting, replaced by a sense of purpose that transcended earthly power. Constantine, witnessing this transformation, is said to have spoken words of blessing. "Blessed are you among the women of Rus, for you have found the light of the true God." For Olga, this was more than a mere ritual. Her baptism marked the beginning of a spiritual journey that would shape the rest of her life. Returning to Kievan Rus, she was filled with a new sense of purpose, a desire to share this newfound faith with her people. She had seen the Byzantine way of life, the unity and power that Christianity brought to its followers, and she believed that this faith could offer the same strength to her own kingdom. But Olga's mission was not easy. She faced fierce resistance from the people of Kievan Rus, who clung to their ancestral beliefs and rituals. Paganism ran deep, woven into the very fabric of their culture and traditions. Her son, Sviatoslav, was among the most resistant, refusing to abandon the gods and practices that had defined his people for centuries. To him, Christianity seemed like a foreign threat, a faith that demanded a rejection of everything familiar. Olga must have felt the weight of this resistance, the disappointment of seeing her own son oppose the faith she had come to cherish. Yet, Olga was undeterred. She knew that change did not come quickly, especially when it involved matters as personal as belief. Rather than force conversion upon her people, she led by example, quietly practicing her faith and dedicating herself to Christian principles. She built churches, modest at first but growing in number, and welcomed Byzantine priests and missionaries who could help nurture Christianity in Kievan Rus. In her lifetime, she did not see her people fully embrace this new faith, but she was planting seeds, cultivating a vision that would bloom in the future. Olga's journey of faith was not merely political, it was deeply personal. She found comfort and strength in Christianity, qualities she had never sought in her earlier life. Perhaps in the quiet moments of prayer, she reflected on the path that had brought her here, from the ashes of vengeance to the hope of redemption. This new faith softened her, adding a layer of compassion and humility to her formidable character. She became a protector of the poor, a patron of the needy, and a ruler who saw her people not just as subjects, but as souls deserving of care and guidance. In her later years, Olga's faith became her legacy. Though Sviatoslav remained steadfast in his pagan beliefs, Olga's quiet persistence created a foundation that her grandson, Vladimir, would one day build upon. Olga had sown the seeds of Christianity in Kievan Rus, seeds that would eventually take root and grow under Vladimir's rule, leading to the full Christianization of the kingdom. Her influence lingered long after her passing, a silent force that shaped the spiritual landscape of Kievan Rus. This transformation from pagan queen to Christian saint is what truly sets Olga apart in history. Her life was a journey of extremes, from fierce vengeance to compassionate faith, revealing a complexity and depth that few rulers could match. She did not simply adopt Christianity, she embodied it, embracing the virtues of patience, humility, and resilience. Olga had found a new path, one that would carry her through her later years and leave an indelible mark on the history of her people. As Olga's faith deepened, her focus shifted from earthly power to a legacy of enduring spirit, a legacy that would transcend time. In her later years, Olga remained a steadfast figure of respect and influence in Kievan Rus. She had transformed from a queen who ruled with vengeance to a wise elder whose counsel shaped the lives of those around her. Though her son Sviatoslav was now the formal ruler, Olga continued to be a guiding presence in the kingdom. Her relationship with him, however, was complex. Sviatoslav admired his mother's strength and intelligence, but he resisted her Christian teachings with a stubborn loyalty to the gods of his ancestors. To him, Christianity seemed a foreign faith, unfit for the warrior spirit of Kievan Rus. Despite his refusal, Olga never gave up on her faith, or her hope that one day her people would embrace it. As she grew older, Olga focused her efforts quietly but persistently, working to nurture small Christian communities across the kingdom. She provided shelter for Byzantine priests, funded modest churches, and encouraged those close to her to explore this new faith. Even though the majority of her people remained loyal to the old gods, Olga's influence could be felt in every corner of her realm. Her faith was not loud or imposing, but steady, like a slow river carving its way through stone. She understood that true change would take time, and she was willing to wait, knowing that she was planting seeds for future generations. Her efforts began to bear fruit in subtle ways. The Christian faith, once seen as strange and foreign, began to attract followers within Kievan Rus. Small gatherings grew into communities, and Olga's quiet resolve became a foundation upon which others built their beliefs. Though her son never converted, Olga's influence left an indelible mark on the culture and spirituality of Kievan Rus, one that her grandson Vladimir would later build upon to fully Christianize the kingdom. In 969, Olga passed away, leaving behind a legacy that would echo through the ages. Her people mourned her as both a queen and a matriarch, a ruler who had led them through dark times with courage and wisdom. Her death marked the end of an era, yet her memory lived on, immortalized in the stories and songs of Kievan Rus. She was not simply remembered as a fierce ruler or a grieving widow, but as a woman who had redefined the very soul of her kingdom. Olga's story did not end with her passing. Centuries later, the Eastern Orthodox Church canonized her as Saint Olga of Kiev, recognizing her not only for her strength as a ruler, but for her unwavering devotion to her faith. She was given the title equal to the apostles, an honor that placed her among the most revered figures in the church. For Olga, faith had become her ultimate conquest, a victory greater than any battle. Her journey from vengeance to sainthood was a testament to the transformative power of faith and resilience. Today, Saint Olga of Kiev stands as a symbol of endurance and transformation. Her life, marked by extremes of power, loss, vengeance, and redemption, is celebrated not just as a tale of one ruler's triumphs and tribulations, but as a story of a soul in search of purpose. Olga's story captures the fascinating duality of power, justice, and faith. From a grieving widow consumed by vengeance to a sovereign who shaped Kievan Rus with resilience and vision, and finally to a saint revered for her unwavering faith, her journey is one of extraordinary transformation. Olga shows us that strength is not a single path, but a tapestry of choices, from moments of fierce justice to acts of quiet faith. Her legacy endures not only in the annals of Eastern European history, but also in the heart of Russian Orthodoxy. Her grandson Vladimir would later embrace the faith she so fervently cultivated, leading Kievan Rus into a new era of Christianity. In Olga, we find a leader who embodied the complexity of human experience, a woman who balanced the fierce and the devout, revenge and redemption. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Olga's life and legacy. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories from ASMR history. There's so much more to uncover together.